So heading right into it, we have Jason Lener, named Westminster College's athletic director in August of 2021. Jason Lener is only the sixth named athletic director in the school's 171-year existence, which is pretty exciting and pretty cool. Before taking on his current role, Jason served in a few executive leadership roles, primarily at the University of Illinois, Miami University, and most recently as an assistant athletic director at the University of Pittsburgh. Before his professional career, I learned that Jason and I have this one thing in common, that we both slug the pigskin around. Jason was the football team and Titans quarterback in the early 1990s. They found a lot of success under Jason's leadership, going 38-9 during his tenure. Was that correct?
It was correct.
Yeah.
Even though I couldn't win the big one, Brandon, but we had some success for sure.
Awesome. Jason went on to begin his professional career as a coach for Robert Morris University, and has served as admin liaison for numerous bowl games and NCAA tournaments. Jason was also a member of the Big Ten Conference Administrative Council. Jason, thanks so much for joining and kicking off season 2 of the MOGL Podcast. You're an athletic director. I know your time is valuable, and you're dealing with family, everything else. But thanks so much for joining today.
Well, I appreciate you having me, and looking forward to the partnership with MOGL for our student athletes. So I'm happy to be here with you today.
Thanks. Cool. I think we'll jump right into it with our first question, Jason. I think was the goal for you always. I think the first part of the conversation I want to have is really to give our listeners and our athletes an insight into how becoming an athletic director is even possible, and it doesn't always have to be a narrow and straight path. So my first question to you is, was the goal always to become an athletic director, or given that coaching role that you had initially, was coaching the primary focus for you early on in your career?
Sure. I think part of it was trying to figure that out, quite frankly, when I decided to go to graduate school to get my master's in sports management. I knew I liked to work in sports. I had been involved in sports for years, as it seems, and I always thought a career in sports would be fun. And at that point, I thought it would just be fun. I think everyone thinks that when you work in sports, it's just fun. Like, all we do is go to practices and go to games, right? There's nothing else that we do. And so the 2 years that I coached at Robert Morris were very rewarding. I enjoyed coaching football. I ended up coaching the running backs. I got to spend some time with two gentlemen who spent their entire career in the NFL with Joe Walton and Dan Radakovich. So I learned a lot of football.
Yeah.
I loved coaching on the field. I loved the game prep, breaking down film, being on the field with the student athletes and helping them get better. We started the program from scratch. So as you can imagine, we had some kids on the team that didn't even play in their own high schools. So there was a lot of teaching and a lot of coaching and a lot of interacting. And I really enjoyed that component of it. But what I realized is, when I looked at all parts of it, I really enjoyed the administrative work. So there were Joe Walton and Dan Radakovich were the only 2 full-time coaches we had, and then we had 3 full-time grad assistants. One of I was which, and so we did a lot of administrative work, and I really enjoyed that side of it, even more so than I did the coaching component. And so it was really those 2 years there that kind of swayed me to say, yeah, you want to work in athletics, but maybe working on the administrative side was the best bet for you, and that's kind of been my career for the last 30 years at this point.
Yeah. You ever find yourself getting back into that coaching mindset, even if it's Westminster's football program? Like, do you miss that on the field?
I will say this. Fortunate for me, the head football coach's office is right across the hall from me. and our field is literally outside of my field house, so I get to go out and kind of whet my appetite a little bit every now and then and watch practice. I do find myself talking to coach maybe the week after the game and just say, hey, tell me why we did this, or what do you think about doing this? Because as a quarterback, we can't just watch the game for the fun of watching the game, right? You're always trying to figure out why they did this. Why didn't you call this? Or why didn't you run this pattern when they're in this coverage? So I do find myself doing that. But it's the days when I go out and watch practice in camp when it's 100 degrees out and they're dying. Those are the days I don't miss it at all.
You don't miss it. Yeah. I think you can have a little bit more comfort knowing that you have more than 6 coaches. I think that experience you had, kind of going off script here, but at Robert Morris was similar to running a startup, right?
Yes.
You're saying you're building a program from ground up, similar to running a startup, wearing many hats, doing different things.
No doubt.
So kudos to you for that. Continuing on with the athletic director path, I think with only 5 predecessors, it's pretty interesting to me, the hiring process you must have endured, Jason, right? So I'm curious about the recruitment and hiring process that you went through, and then ultimately ending back up at your alma mater as the athletic director. If you can kind of summarize that experience.
Yeah, it was interesting. We were at the University of Illinois, and we were coming out of COVID, and we had wanted our kids to get through high school, and then once they made it through high school, we had always hoped to get back closer to home because we're both from Western Pennsylvania. So we started actively looking at other opportunities, and it was a really tough time to move at that point. There were a lot of schools that were making cuts and that weren't necessarily hiring, and so it really was not a great time. But there was some movement with some positions that opened up where they were hiring alumni to come in and lead their athletic departments. And so I'll never forget, one day we were just sitting around, and my wife said to me, she goes, "Do you think Coach Daffler will ever retire from Westminster?" Coach Daffler was the AD here for 22 years prior to me. When I was in school here, he was the assistant basketball coach. So I have known Coach Daffler for 30 years.
Yeah.
And I said, I don't know. I said, he's been there a long time. I don't know that he's going to retire anytime soon. And we just kind of left it at that.
Yeah.
About 6 weeks later, I get a phone call from a number that I don't recognize, and I answer the phone, and it's one of the coaches that I played for here who still lives in the area. He's since retired, and he said, "Hey, by the way, I just want to let you know that Coach Daffler is announcing his resignation or his retirement on Friday. Would you be interested?" And of course I said, "Yeah, why not? I mean, who has a chance to go back to their alma mater in a leadership capacity?" And so I threw my name in the ring, and certainly made a few phone calls to people who I knew were influential and still tied with the school, and just so happened that it worked out. And I remember I took the job on a Friday afternoon, and I was at work Monday morning, and so my wife was like, "Gee, don't you take any time to transition?" And it was in August, and I knew it was it was a time of year where teams were going to report, and they needed someone. So I was here quickly, and it's been great to return back to your alma mater. There's a lot of the coaches that I played for, they're not coaching anymore, but they're still in the area. They're still active in the school, and so it's been a really nice opportunity to come back home.
Man, I have so many questions. I'm so intrigued because, one, within the school, again, I think the school was founded in 1852, and today it's 2023, right? So that puts the school at, I hope, almost 175 years old. And is it correct that there's only 5 athletic directors before you, and then you're the 6th or the 7th? And are you expecting to be there for 2 to 3 decades? And or I guess my next question is when was sports introduced to the program? And I know there's only 1,200 students, so I just have so many questions about it. How do you look at it?
There's definitely truth to the fact that I'm the 6th athletic director in the history of the school.
Yeah.
You can't.
Is that normal though, Jason?
I would say no. It's not really normal. During that same time frame, there's been 15 presidents.
Wow.
So, my predecessors have been here a really long time. You can't see it on my wall, but I have all the previous ADs on my wall. And the one that I took over for, like I said, was the assistant basketball coach when I was here. The one before that was my football coach when I was here. He was the AD and the head football coach when I first got here. Then he retired from coaching and went to be an AD. The 2 before that are Harold Burry and Buzz Riddle, who are nationally known coaches in their sport and athletic directors. So it's funny because I was here for about a month and a half and we had my first Hall of Fame. And so we go through the Hall of Fame that night to have our induction dinner and so forth. And Coach Daffler comes up to me afterwards and he goes, "First one down, 20 more to go." And I just started laughing. I said, "Oh, you think I'm going to be here 20 years like you are?" But Jim was here 22 years, and Coach Fusco before him was here 20 some odd years, and the guys that were there before him were each here like 10, 12 years each. So it's been kind of historical the way it's gone, and so it's just an honor to have this position, especially coming after the guys that have been here, and for the success that this small school in Little New Wilmington has had. It's a pretty unique situation.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. I obviously wish you the best. I think it sounds like it's such a homey type of environment there, and people who retire, are staying within the community and want to stay involved and give back. So that sounds like a type of community that I would enjoy. So that's awesome. I think, heading over into kind of, your role as the athletic director at a smaller institution, Jason, what are some advantages and maybe some disadvantages of leading a program that might not be so noticeable for everyday fan, right? I think with the ever-evolving landscape of college sports, you're surely set up against, you have your back against some walls, but if you can kind of riddle off a few advantages that you see and then maybe a few disadvantages with today's world of college sports.
Sure. I think that, my whole career, as you've read off, was spent at the Division I level, right, where every little thing that you do is scrutinized. It's in the newspaper. You got an athlete getting in trouble, and there's an article about it. One of the good things that we have here is when those things happen, nobody really knows about them. And we certainly have our fair share of challenges, right? I mean, it's not everybody's a saint, and we have our issues, but when we do have those issues that, we don't necessarily have to read about it in USA Today or see it on the ESPN ticker, and you're managing it more locally and more on your campus, and you're not really having to do any type of damage control, so to speak.
Yeah.
But then on the flip side is that when you guys when we're doing something really well and we have athletes that you want to promote and talk about, you don't have those media outlets that are there as well. So there's a little bit of give and take, right? It's you take the good and you take the bad. And the one thing that I've learned in transitioning to a small college is that what I want for our student athletes here was no different than what I wanted for our student athletes when I was at Pitt, Miami, or Illinois. Yeah. It's all about providing them that experience that you had at Notre Dame, or that the kids that I had at those other schools. You want them to have a wonderful experience, that they enjoy their time no matter what school they're at, that they're able to grow and learn, have some athletic success, be treated in a manner that's professional, and that you give them the opportunity to be successful. And when they leave here, that if they're asked to come back in some capacity or get involved or give back financially, that they had an experience that they enjoyed so much that they're willing to do that. Yeah. I often share with our student athletes that if I didn't have that kind of experience, I wouldn't be sitting in this chair right now. Right. If my time at Westminster was such that I really didn't enjoy it, I didn't like the experience, I certainly would not have wanted to come back as the athletic director. Right. And so you're never going to bat 1,000, but if the majority of our kids can have that experience, then we're doing okay leading them and providing them that experience. So there's a lot of things that, one of the biggest things that people asked me when I was interviewing for the job was, how are you going to transition from Division I to Division III? Yeah. And I told them, I said, I don't think it's going to be as hard as you all think it is. I said, it's certainly the finances are going to be different, right? Like, I get it. The stadiums are different. The salaries are different. But the student athlete experience is the same, right? The goal is to get your degree. That's the number one goal no matter where you go. Right. And number two is we play high level sports at a small college level. There's no difference other than, the student athletes are bigger, faster, and stronger, but that's not who we're competing against. Right. And so, what I kept telling them is that just because there's going to be some differences in things that you see visually, it shouldn't necessarily be a difference in the way that you're providing for them and the opportunities that you're giving them. And so for me, it's been very rewarding to be able to impact our young men and women in the ways that I think we've been able to.
Yeah, that's an amazing answer, Jason. And as a former college athlete, recently removed, I appreciate that. And specifically because I went from graduating from the University of Notre Dame, where there's one experience, and it sits on Mount Everest when it comes to college and college sports, and then transferred to UCF, where there's a different experience, and they're more in the startup building phase of their program, and have found a lot of success. But two different experiences, and I'm just glad that both of them focused on the athlete experience and the student experience of wanting to help them achieve their goal of getting that degree. So I appreciate that from an athletic director's standpoint. I think part of that, Jason, obviously, is this ever-evolving landscape of college sports and the introduction of name, image, and likeness legislation. You are one of the athletic directors to jump ahead within your conference, the first to do that. So why is it important for all athletic directors to have this mindset, to be able to evolve and adapt, right? And, and build a name, image, and likeness strategy for their respective programs? Why is that important?
Yeah, this profession has changed so much over the years, from even when I got into it 30 years ago. I mean, it's so very different. Just with all the things that have changed, regarding the portal and in NIL and the salaries and everything, it's just very, very different. And I have a lot of old school in me, right? Like, I have my old helmet that I wore here, and we just had a W on our helmet back then, right? But now our W is a W with a Titan in it, and I have our old, my predecessors on the wall. So there's a lot of part of me that believes in a lot of the old school things that were in place when I played and when I was growing up. But I think you also, in order to be a leader in today's day and age, in 2023 in this field, you have to adapt, and you have to understand what the young men and women want today. And if you can't do that, I don't know that you could work in this profession as an athletic director or as a coach. And for me, here's a good example. So when I got here in the fall of 21, we were wearing gray helmets, and we were also wearing navy blue pants. All right, and for the layperson, you might go, so what? Well, yeah. Traditionally, we wear home white helmets, we wear navy blue jersey, and we wear white pants. That's just tradition Westminster. Yeah. And so I said to Scott, I said, I'd like to get back to where we're wearing white, blue, white for home games. I said, but I also understand recruiting. Like, I understand that you're recruiting young men today that want to see things differently, right? They don't want to just do what you've done for 60 years. So this past summer, we went out and we bought an alternative jersey, right? It's a powder blue, kind of like a Carolina blue jersey. Yeah. And I said, I'm happy that you can have this, but you need to wear it on the road. And so what I've tried to share with our coaches is that I have a lot of old school in me, and kind of my expectations of how you coach, how you teach, even with our student athletes in terms of your work ethic, your commitment, your loyalty. But I also have to adapt to today's modernness, right? And understanding that, 100%. You know what, the student athlete wants to see shiny new things. They want to see new facilities. They want to see nice things. And so with that in mind, with regards to NIL, I've tried to do, I'm the first athletic director that's on this wall that was actually trained to be an athletic director. Every person that came before me was a coach. Yeah. And that's not to say that they weren't good at what they did or didn't do a fabulous job, but they just transitioned from being a coach to an athletic director. And what I told the crew that was interviewing me is that I've trained professionally for, at that point, 27 years to be an athletic administrator. Right. And so what I've tried to do is bring some of the things that I've learned at the schools at the highest level and implement some of them here at Westminster, so our student athletes can have some of those things. And it might be on a much, much smaller scale, but to them it's a really big deal.
Yeah.
And so when I looked at NIL, I thought, why not? Like, why not be at the forefront, right?
Yeah.
And so there's nobody in our conference that's doing it. There's only a handful of Division III schools that are doing it.
Right.
And in everything that I've done here in my 2+ years has really been what can we do to differentiate Westminster? What tools can I give our coaches that when they're recruiting and it comes down to 3 schools, what's going to differentiate Westminster from the other schools? Well, it's the fuel station we have, or our partnership with, we're wearing Nike product now, or it's the NIL. I want to give our student athletes, number one, a reason to come here, and then our coaches a reason to recruit.
Yeah.
So that's why we're doing some of these things, and it's been fun. I'll be honest with you. I never thought we would have a full 500 student athletes jump in, but the ones that have jumped in, they're excited, and the ones that I run into, they're very thankful that we're going down this path, and they're excited about it. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, right? If you're doing things for our young men and women that are making, once again, that experience, what you want it to be, then it tells you that you're doing things the right way.
Amen. Yeah. Great. So you spoke about NIL and the introduction of it, and why you guys at Westminster want to be ahead of the game, and thanks for that summary and that insight. I guess quickly for that athlete or for that student who is looking to become an athletic director, do you think the role of an athletic director is still as highly coveted of a role, Jason, as it used to be? Maybe before 2021, July of 2023, like you took on your first official role as an athletic director of a program a month after it went legal, name, image, and likeness. Were you ready for this challenge, and were you accepting of it, and do you think that next person is still wanting to be an athletic director, or do you think that's gone away at all?
Yeah, I couldn't wait to be an athletic director. I feel like I always used to tell my wife, I said, this is the one job I feel like you work forever, and sometimes there's never an end in sight, right? Like at least when you go to medical school, that when you graduate, you're a doctor, right? It took me 25+ years before I got a chance to become an AD. I think that some of these jobs are so coveted, and there's not a lot of them. I do think that the profession has changed in the last 5 years. I think you're seeing some folks that are getting out of the profession. I think that it's changed so much that, especially if you've been in it a long time, that they don't necessarily want to deal with all the modernization of it and all the changes, and so you're seeing maybe before, when jobs would open up, there would be lots and lots of folks who wanted to be an athletic director. Now I see more of folks who have leadership roles, senior level positions within an athletic department, and they're okay with that, right? And that's okay. Like, I don't think that everybody has to be an athletic director in order to make a difference working in college athletics. It's a different profession. It's a way of life. We don't work Monday through Friday 9 to 5. This past weekend we had our beginning of the year basketball tournament, and so here Friday we were here till 9:30, 10 o'clock, and then Saturday we had our last home football game, and then we had 2 more basketball games. And so when you look at what is your work life like, it's a commitment, and if there's some people that just don't want that, and that's okay. I try to tell our young students that think they want to work in athletics, I said, come figure out right now if this is something that you like, because when you get to my age, you better like it, because there's not a whole lot you're going to get out and do at this point. But at the end of the day, higher ed is a special place to work. I've shared with numerous people that this is probably the most rewarding job that I've had. I get to impact young men and women in a way that a lot of people don't get to. And it's very fulfilling, especially when you see them achieve, and that you played a small part in that. That makes you feel good, and that makes you feel like you're doing something right. And at the end of the day, that's why we do what we do. And so I think for those of us that are in this profession, we're in it for those reasons. And I think they're very valid reasons, and it's we're trying to better young men and women for the future. So it's it's a very rewarding job.
Absolutely. I think I wanted to ask that question just because I've seen high end or high caliber coaches kind of step down, specifically within the basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Within basketball, and I think I think given the time that they've done that, right, of resigning, a lot of people speculated that it was due to you know the ins and outs of name, image, and likeness, and the transfer portal and whatnot. So I wanted to hear from an athletic director. I think before we had technical difficulties for everybody listening, we were on the topic of name, image, and likeness and Westminster's approach and early approach and differentiating within their conference. And obviously our partnership we established within the last month, Jason. So I guess speaking to that, what are your hopes for our partnership between MOGL and Westminster Athletics as your athletes look to engage in name, image, and likeness? And then ultimately, why did you end up choosing the MOGL solution over others?
Sure. My hope is that as many of our student athletes that want to take advantage of it and want to work towards making some additional money have success. And, I think when, so much of the NIL discussion is really at the highest level, right? I mean, you read about the guys that are making 6 figures, 7 figures, and we certainly know that that's not the world we live in. But if I could have some student athletes that make a couple extra $1,000 because of their own name, image, and likeness, I think that's phenomenal. Like, we didn't have that. There's a lot of things that they have today that I didn't have, that you didn't have, and I don't begrudge them. I think it's great. Like, I'm happy that they have those things because I think that just shows you that we have all evolved, right? I mean, this college campus looks a lot different than when I was here. Our locker rooms do, our fields do. So why shouldn't that experience? And so my hope is that they're able to have success doing it, and they think that whatever time and energy and effort they put into it was worthwhile. Brandon, in terms of why I ended up going with you guys, is because I felt comfortable working with you, and so much of that, when you have a lot of options, that you want to find people that you enjoy working with, and things that are important to me are when I reach out to someone and they respond quickly or they get back with an answer. Like, those things seem really little, but they're important to me. And when you have options, there's always things that differentiate people, and so you want to go with someone who you can trust, who you feel cares about you. And I know going into this, when there's certainly a lot more finances involved with working with larger schools and larger properties. Like, I get that, but I also want someone who cares about little old Westminster in New Wilmington, Pennsylvania. Like, for us, this is a really, really big deal. And when you look at going with MOGL, and I'm not saying this happens at your place, but it's only natural to say, okay, they've got some really large brands, and they're going to take on this small college in New Wilmington, Pennsylvania, and we'll get their attention every once in a while, but we understand where things are really going to have most of their attention. I understand that, but the fact that you guys are responsive, that the presentation you gave us was, it was like you had every detail attended to, and so I appreciate those things, because it's important to me that whoever I'm working with, no matter what the project is, that we're important to them, right. And that's what makes me feel good about working with you guys.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate that, Jason, and we're excited to help you guys out, and genuinely mean that, and open up all of our services and our doors for you and your athletes. So final 2 questions that I think some of your athletes and your community would want to hear, right? So where do you hope to make the biggest impact at Westminster is the first question, over your maybe next 2 to 3 or 4 decades that you spend on campus?
Yeah, we have some facility projects that we need to get taken care of. We've certainly, when I came back, I inherited some really, really nice upgraded facilities from when I was here 30 years ago. But we have a couple spaces that are tired that need to be addressed. So I would like to see some of those things done in the next couple years. And I want to win more. I want to win more. I think that what I've shared with our coaches and with our student athletes is, that when you work at a small school that has a lot of history and a lot of tradition, sometimes it's challenging to implement change, and so you come a little complacent, and you think that because you've had success in the past that you're always going to continue to have that success. And so what I like to say is that yes, we're Westminster College, but we're not the same old Westminster College,
Right.
because we need to do things differently. We're not just going to show up anymore and have that success. And so I want to make sure that our folks know that winning is important, and I don't apologize for wanting to win. I'm the athletic director, and part of what athletes do is they compete. And I share this a lot, and it's a stupid phrase, but there's a scoreboard for a reason, right? If nobody cared who won, then there wouldn't be a scoreboard. So I want to make sure that our athletes come here, they have a great academic experience, and they have a chance to win some championships. That's important to me.
Awesome. And then the last question I have for you, Jason, thanks again so much for your time. It's what's one piece of advice you'd give to your 23-year-old self?
Oh, wow. I look back at my career, and it was so much about the climb, right? Like once you go, like my very first, you'll appreciate this, my very first event was Pitt versus West Virginia when Amos Zaraway was playing. And we were playing at Old Pitt Stadium, and he took the opening kickoff all the way back for a touchdown. And I was working in the ticket office, and I was on the field, and I actually did at the time think, man, this is what we do in athletics. We get to go to games like this, and
right.
This is what we all do. I think maybe like soak in some more of the experiences that you have when you're going through the process. Like I've had a chance to do some really neat things.
Yeah.
I've been to a lot of bowl games. We played in the Fiesta Bowl when I was at Pitt. I got to go to the Maui Invitational when I was at Illinois. And my family has had a chance to really do some pretty cool things because Dad worked in athletics.
For sure.
And I probably would tell myself to maybe take it easy a little bit and enjoy some of those moments. But it's hard to do when you're in it, right? Because you're so caught up in the moment and the work and trying to make sure you do the right thing and do your job really well. And but my son thinks he wants to do this now. My son's a junior at Penn State, and because that's all they've known. Like they've been on the field for big football games, and they've been on the court after winning Big Ten champion. I mean, that's been their life. And so
Yep.
I got two stories for you, and then I'll shut up. So when I was at Miami, we had a chance to go visit Ben Roethlisberger when he was with the Steelers. Okay, and so I wasn't the AD at the time. I was the deputy athletic director, but we got to sit in Ben's box. And
Wow.
so it was Ben's parents, and he wasn't married at the time, and some other folks, and my wife and I and our three kids. And so, I think they at the time were like, I don't know, 9 and 11. Well, they thought that that's how you watched a NFL football game, right? That you got to sit into a box and you got to eat food all the time, and that was the way. And I said, no, that's not the way it works, guys. And then the last story is also when I was at Miami. We decided one day we were just going to go to a Cincinnati Reds game. We didn't call anybody for tickets, parking, or anything. We just said, let's go to the game. And so we parked where we parked. And, for all of my kids' life, Dad got to park right next to the stadium, underneath the stadium, and we had to park. And we pulled in, and one of my kids goes, Dad, do we have to walk all the way to the basketball stadium? And so, they've had a great experience. It's been a wonderful profession. My time here is so rewarding. Like I said, my interactions with our student athletes are phenomenal, and being able to provide them opportunities such as this partnership with you guys is just one more component of providing that experience for them.
Yeah, those are great stories. I think they're so important, right? When you grow up a certain way, to kind of have those one-off experience, just to show them, how a majority of other people are living, right?
Right.
Like, I'm spoiled as well from how I experience a lot of things.
Yes.
I've been given a lot of things, and so now not playing, you're not as marketable or as likable by a lot, right? It's just the inevitable way that life progresses, especially playing the position that you and I both played. But so it's always important to have that perspective. But Jason, thanks again so much for joining Westminster's athletic director in his third year. We wish you much success for an athletic department and program, and obviously through our partnership for all of the name, image, and likeness experiences and opportunities. So thanks again.
Well, I appreciate your time, Rand, and it's in the short time we've worked with you, I've enjoyed interacting with you and your team. So all the best to you guys, and certainly look forward to a really positive relationship with you guys. So thanks to you. I appreciate your time today.
You got it, man. Good luck. Thanks.